Thank you for the organizer, Chris and Andrew, for this invitation. Today, I'm going to talk about AI advances in quantitative molecular imaging from industrial standpoint. It's going to be an overview of basic AI models and what is out there in terms of products. So, therefore, I have a disclaimer here that I'm with GE Healthcare. But as I said, I'm going to provide an overview of products out there, purely based on their white paper and what is in the literature. So I'm not in favor or against their products or their work. Just very briefly, I want to talk about deep learning. As you know, deep learning is a branch of artificial intelligence where we use artificial neural networks, and they resemble our biological neural networks. And they form certain building blocks that we can put together in order to define certain architectures, such as convolutional neural networks, layers, fully connected layers, activations. And you can come up with different architectures, such as UNet, ResNet, and so on. Just to put it in a context, for example, if you have a patient laying on the table, there's a camera up there, and you want to track the patient, whether it moves or to predict certain features. So you could have this simple convolutional neural network. It's called VGGNet. The backbone is VGGNet, but it has two parts: feature extraction, and at the end, certain decisions such as regression. And this one, the real-world application for this is auto positioning, which GE scanner, PET-CT, and CT scanner they provide. So that camera just monitors the patient and sends the image into the neural network, and it does automatic landmarking. For example, here 8 different landmarks are identified, and then the scanner decides what is the scanner range and how to isocenter the patient. The reason I said this is one of the really basic applications of AI, and other vendors out there, they have similar solutions. This is for GE, and that camera has different, it monitors the depth, so it can, for example, says whether this patient collides with this scanner, so you need to adjust it. So with this real-world example, I want to go forward you a broader picture of application of AI in medical imaging. We start from preparation, where we prepare the already pharmaceutical, or we prepare the patient. Just there are a tremendous amounts of application where, for example, you want to, in hot lab, you want to automate certain tasks, or when it's the patients there, you want to do optimized protocol selection, or what I showed you, patient positioning. And then we go for data acquisition. During the acquisition, again, there are where AI can help us to provide more patient-specific or smart imaging, where the scanner, I believe in future, will have a scanner which decide how long I'm going to scan this patient based on patient the physiology or the disease. And you can do real-time motion tracking. The scanner might decide, oh, I see certain features, I need to keep track of them. So once you have the data, we go to the next part, which is the interest of this talk, image reconstruction. Whether it's data correction, such as attenuation correction or scatter or motion correction, or image reconstruction, such as we have heard many times in this symposium about denoising or improving resolution, like a partial volume correction or motion correction. And then we go to downstream clinical tasks. There are lots of applications there, such as segmentation, quantification, or clinical reports in order to provide, for example, here, patient triage, or provide decision support for those tasks, whether it's treatment or prognosis. So with that overall picture, I want to now move back to artificial networks and deep learning, I mentioned about the traditional deep learning and a little bit about generative AI in the context of pseudo-CT generation. Just very briefly, the first speaker also mentioned about these networks. Just want to start with this graph. Imagine this distribution represents all possible CT scan of human body. Suppose there is such a distribution, and if you have access to that, you can generate samples, just pick up some samples, and it creates those CT images, for example, pediatric, male patients or female patients. Now, based on these, generally, there are two types of generative AI. The first category tries to learn that distribution in order to parameterize that distribution, and such as variational autoencoders, or the very recent one, flow-based models. Once they estimate that latent parameter, therefore they can parameterize this distribution, then you can generate samples. Another category is models that without directly estimating the distribution, they try to generate samples as if you have access to that distribution, such as generative adversarial networks or diffusion models. Of course, there are different architecture that blends in between these two. For example, latent diffusions models, they belong to both. But I want to mention very recently, as the first speaker mentioned, the flow-based models are getting momentum. For example, I learned Google, the latest AI generator, image generator, Nano Banana 2, it has moved from diffusion models towards flow-based approaches models, because this latest one, they are much more stable than GAN and much faster than diffusion models. So I suppose we will see more of these models being used in our community. So with that brief introduction of generative AI and deep learning, now I want to focus on the application of AI in imaging. So currently we get the data from a scanner, we send it to a reconstruction box, which we know it has all the physics, is based on mathematical models, we know about it. So model-based reconstruction, we get the image out. If you want to use the AI on some form, whether it's generative or simple CNNs, there are different pathways you can leverage these networks, like that black box, you don't know what it is, but different ways to deploy it within the reconstruction. Three approaches: direct reconstruction. You send the data in form of sinogram or list mode into that black box, it generates the image. The challenge is there are a number of academic papers or some manufacturers, they are working on that category of AI reconstruction. Challenge is the network has to learn about the physics, system metrics, about attenuation correction, let's say PSF, everything has to learn from there. But it's really fast. The moment it learns, it can generate the image in a matter of milliseconds. The second category says, no, we have experienced like 40, 50 years of image reconstruction. Let's not throw it away. So we have let's have this black box or deep learning within the reconstruction, such as in a parallel arrangement. There are solutions out there, again, commercial solutions, which we will review briefly later on. So much better than the first approach in terms of deployment, because the data are quite tricky there, or you have the network has to learn less amounts of tasks here. The last arrangement is post-reconstruction, where you reconstruct your image, you send it to that reconstruction box, and again, there are FDA-approved products out there. Then the question would be how you choose which one you have to go after. And this is a really important question. depends where you are, in industry or academia. Let me explain from industrial standpoint. I think the best way to answer this is to realize who's involved with that product, what's the process. So I'm going to very briefly to discuss about the life cycle of an ML solution and which teams are involved. Usually, the problem starts with the product team. They said, oh, we have a business goal. For example, we have a camera. We want to monitor the patient. That's a problem. They come to data science team. They said, oh, can you formulate it as a machine learning problem? Okay, we collect the data. We train a network. We deploy it. Talk to your software team if it's possible. That scanner has how many GPUs does it have? Can I accommodate my network there? And you do with clinical app. And this is a really iterative process. It goes maybe many times. Data comes in, and you have to fine-tune the network. There again, these teams, they decide a lot of they answer a lot of questions. From product standpoint, what is my clinical and customer needs, and how I would like to differentiate from other vendors? Should I go for a direct pet reconstruction because no one has done it, or I have to go more conservative way? And what is the return on my investment? This is really important, because you might say, okay, on-roll iterative reconstruction are really cool. They are physics. They have more physics fidelity. But at the end of the day, you might say, I'm happy to accept some error, but I'll go for post-reconstruction deployment because it's much faster for me to deploy it. So those questions you have to answer. Another really important question is scalability across different scanners. Because if you, the moment you say, I want to deploy this solution across all PET-CT scanners, then you have to go to prove it to FDA if you go after a product. And it means a lot of work you have to consider. Then this same data science, they have to really formulate that problem in terms of, do we have enough access to data, enough data? What are the quality of data? And very importantly, the robustness of this solution is really important. So you might see, you will see afterwards, after this slide, the vendors have gone to much simpler network in order to increase robustness, or stay robust. And also have to consider. Lastly, I want to mention scalability. If you want to deploy your solution in the cloud services, then by that decision, you rule out direct reconstruction or iterative reconstruction, because it's really difficult to send the data into cloud, do reconstruction, come back and forth is impossible. And compute efficiency is really important, in my opinion. We have heard diffusion models are really good, but unfortunately, at the moment, they are really slow, and no way you can deploy it on clinical settings. So with that review of how you make a decision about this deployment, I would like to go briefly review what is out there. I included some of academic papers, and actually for the interest of this audience, I will mention the vendors. I'm affiliated with GE, I should not, but for the interest of audience, I will mention, just to be aware of what is out there. So direct reconstruction, one of the early deployments, early efforts was for a spec image reconstruction, where you have your sinogram. And the simple 2-3 layers is try to learn filtering and back projection. It's called data-driven filter back projection. Another work in our field was AutoMap, where it tries to learn sort of back projection and filtering, again, using convolutional neural network. So again, the task is to learn everything, system metrics, PSF, and maybe attenuation correction. So this work, and DeepRed, there are a number of work in the literature, made it to one of the vendors to experiment this approach called FastPet. with the trick that instead of, so you have a TOF capable system where you back project your TOF data in the form of histograms. Basically, it's just back projection of data into image space, you can see. And using attenuation map, they send it to a unit, and that network is being trained to mimic a fully corrected PET reconstruction. I see it as an image-based attenuation scatter correction, because from here, they try to map to this image. Beauty is very, very fast, but one of the major problems, I would say lack of generalizability. Of course, in this perfusion brain image, in terms of quantification, yeah, we get the result, but there is a lot of work needs to be done there. Similarly, another vendor to try to say, okay, instead of, you can group these histoprojections into different views. So they tried another one. This is from Hamamatsu group. So in order to make this approach better, again, the image attenuation map, different histoprojections, they go to the network in order to predict the final image. A comparison between FastPET and that approach, still improvement in terms of lesion shape, as you may see here, is more faithful to the simulated lesion, but still quantification-wise, I would say there are much more work to do. Same group, they tried to use unit, modify the unit, include this time, for each skip connection, they added a sensitivity image, a projection of that sinogram into the image space in order to inform the network more spatial information. And they showed, compared to deep PET, is another one of the pioneering works in the field. It shows that's also direct reconstruction. It improves the generalizability. So with that review of the direct reconstruction, showing you the potential is really fast, but I believe it's data hungry. You need to include a lot of data into the network. So actually, also, my colleagues, they have tried to include deep learning within the reconstruction for spec imaging. So you do iterative reconstruction, you send it to a pre-trained neural network. It does some sort of denoising image enhancement, and that gets looped back to the reconstruction process. It's an iterative process, but within the reconstruction. As you can see, it's capable to improve the lesion detection and quantification. For example, here in the neck area, there are a couple of lesions that they are popping out. This work from Canon Medical by Aaron Asma, as we know him, brilliant work, just added here the network from the white paper showing this simple residual learning unit is also doing the job for noise reduction and contrast enhancement. For example, the product is called AI or ICE, ICE, where the lesion clearly you can see are more detectable and they have better contrast. There was a mention, so we go to now post-reconstruction, which is the majority of work is in post-reconstruction because it's easier. You don't need to change the reconstruction software, or you can deploy it on cloud-based, or also you can go cross-vendor. This is another important factor if you want to have your own company one day. For them, this work is from SuttlePET, by the way, but they use from Stanford. Is basically is a denoising image enhancement. You can see 25% of data. Obviously, the image is quite noisy compared to ground truth 100% data. With their solution, as you can see, as a post-reconstruction, it tries to map the noisy image to high-quality image. And in their clinical reader study, where compared to low count enhancement, they showed this solution is not inferior compared to the standard. So yeah, they have shown cross vendors, so they can deploy it in different consoles. We have seen work from another manufacturer. I'm sure you're aware of their team, United Imaging, where their solution is called Deep Progressive Reconstruction, DPR. There are different names if you go to their paper. Again, I'm trying to just be faithful to what is out there. So hopefully you can find more details. So basically, also I see it as a post-reconstruction where they have two networks. The first network is the denoising, and it sends the denoised image to another network called enhancer, which does enhancing. So how they train the network denoising, they have Explorer scanner. So they try to simulate lower counts and as an input, and they try to map it to high quality data. And for enhancement, low iteration to high iteration, as simple as that. And their network is a bit complicated, but again, is a conventional neural network. As you can see for phantoms, I believe this is phantom. Oh no, it's a patient brain, and for oncology, noise reduction and contrast enhancement. Similar problem for GE scanner, which Omni, they have higher sensitivity and low not time of flight. So we train a neural network in order to learn the tough behavior in image space. What is it? Like lesion detection. Without time of flight, lesions are not detectable. So with this solution, we try to mimic the tough behavior as much as possible. Here is a dynamic image where you can see volume of distribution. Actually, is a path-like, but volume of distribution. With that solution, you have more features and structure contrast recovery. So just to mention here, a lot of academic work, very nice work from Gang about diffusion networks. I have not seen yet in industry any adaptation of these networks because of, I believe, computational, one of the issues. Just very briefly, I will just to mention in terms of AI, motion and misalignment correction, there are a number of nice works out there. I refer you to this paper where they try to inject AI in every steps of motion tracking, motion estimation, and they show they are capable of where we have misalignment between PET and CT, especially banana artifacts, or there is a motion, you can see without motion correction, you have two lesions, whereas it's actually one. Also, from other vendor, they try to tackle similar problem. This time, again, misalignment between PET and CT. The input to the network is non-attenuation corrected PETs. CT, it goes to the network. It's trying to predict deformation fields. You can see a similar structure as I mentioned early on, feature extraction, regression. And with that, they show it's quite generic. Any kind of motion is going to help. So if attenuation is, CT is problematic, so there are other approaches as well. But in the context of total body and pediatric imaging, there are a good number of work. The first speaker covered a lot of approaches out there. But just to mention, if the CT has problems, misaligned, you have a total body scanner, the CT, you want to have partial CT, you can rely on AI. And you can see this is a pseudo CT. This paper, they use a generative adversarial network. And my last slide. Also, sometimes, as George mentioned, you always better to keep the traditional reconstruction because if you have if you see an artifact, you can side by side compare it to a AI-generated PET, for example here, the researchers here, they try to say, if I'm doubtful about my pets because there's a misalignment or there's truncation, you can use deep learning to generate a fully corrected pet from non-attenuation corrected pet. Then you can do side-by-side comparison if it's attenuation or if it's scatter correction problems. So with that, I would like to close up this talk, and I hope I could give you an overview of what is out there from industrial standpoint. Thank you very much.